a lot of people don't know the backstory of Andela, for example. Andela started as Fora. What my partner at Lofting led the investment in as angel investors then. What invested in originally was Fora. But in being someone with integrity, pivoted that idea from Fora to Andela and carried all those investors into Andela. Imagine if he didn't have integrity. Legally, he can declare that that entity is bankrupt. Legally.
Failed, yeah.
And if you like go to the Supreme Court of the world, you will not win the case. I'm lucky, for example, where I'm currently working, SWEET for short, Southwest Innovation and Technology Company Limited. SWEET is funded by Odua. And I've been lucky to be given some capital to run my program. So, for example, at SWEET, our unique selling point at SWEET is that we're focused on commercializing research outputs. So before now, I was just supporting innovators, from everywhere, from academia, from the street, from university, from pre-university, anybody. So far, you're an innovator. But at SWEET, we're focused on researchers. So if you're an industry researcher or you're an academic researcher, you have an IP that you're working on, and that IP is ripe, and you need support to take it to the market. That's what we do at SWEET. And for the next 5 years at SWEET, with the support of Odua, we will be investing $250,000 in our accelerator, which we're looking for more investors to join us in our accelerator. That we can then put a few of those, researchers with their outputs or those research outputs, and then accelerate in the market. Let me give you as context to what can come out of, research commercialization. A group of researchers in Unilag got some grant to build a urine analysis test kit for malaria. So before now, and it's the first of its kind in the world, they've done it successfully. Before now, if you have malaria, you have to go to the hospital. So the impact of what these guys have built is huge. So they did this research, and today they have a kit where you can pee into a small bowl, use a test strip, and you can know if you have malaria. And that can save tens of thousands of lives from dying, because some people overdose on antibiotics that affect their, some organs or some parts of their body, while some people take anti-malaria and then you start to have malaria resistance resistance through the Anopheles mosquito.
Yeah.
And then people then start to die because they then take anti-malaria next time, it will not work. And then it will lead to cerebral spinal issues or diseases, and people then die of malaria. So all these things are all related, right? Now, that research output is Nigerian from Unilag, and we're looking for ideas like that can come out of research labs that can spore. Another one I like to talk about is a professor that died in 2019, late 2019. But his work, he was the first winner of the NLNG Prize for Science, which rewards researchers with great research. And one of the things he did, maybe not the first winner, but was one of the winners of the NLNG Prize for Science. But his whole life work, he was a geophysicist and an engineer. His whole life work was about using laterite as an alternative to build roads, especially in erosion-prone areas. So cement is not as durable. We proved that cement is not as durable as laterite in places where there's heavy erosion, like gully erosion. And he stumbled on that idea when he was supervising the federal government work on the Ikotekpene Calabar Road in the 70s. So all his life as a researcher, that was what he did. That, look, he was able to prove that laterite can withstand up to 20 years of erosion, while cement can only withstand 6 years of erosion. Why? And today in Nigeria, we have parts where we can't even build, and laterite costs about 1/3 of the amount to build roads. That's the technology. That's something we're willing to invest in. Imagine if we're building roads, instead of using cement, we're building road at 1/3 the cost. Those are the things that we invest. So again, finding those resources is key. And we're lucky that at SWEET, we're being funded by Odua, but it's not enough. We need a minimum of $1 million US every year to invest in 10 solid, research outputs that can then go on to change our lives fundamentally. And that's what we're focused on, for example, at Sweet.
I mean, thanks a lot for sharing that. And I'm joining, Wole here to call on investors to, reach out to him on this sweet project because, as we all can see, it's laudable and he's passionate about it. And I mean, Wole has a track record of, building great things. So I'm sure that when you invest in Sweet, right, your investment is in safe hands. All right. Now, I have a question for you, Wally, and it's an interesting one because most of the times, right, when I do these interviews, I do it with entrepreneurs, and in every sense of it, you are. But you're not just an entrepreneur; you are also on the side of. So your entrepreneurship journey has taken you to that point where you also support entrepreneurs. So you're not just like building a business, you're building businesses, right? To, supporting businesses, right? Not just one. And my question is around what do you look out for, right? When young entrepreneurs or innovators and all of that, when they reach out to you and they say, I have this idea, I have these, I've done this so far. What do you look at? What makes you feel like, man, I want to invest in this, or we need to put our money behind this?
Thank you. Great, great, great question. Because yeah, the entrepreneur is everything. Um, so the values that we look out for in entrepreneurs came out of an excerpt that is a speech excerpt given by delivered by Chief Obafemi in the I think 1963, just a few years after independence, and there are just about 5 or 6 of them. One is courage. Does that entrepreneur have the courage to walk and to travel paths less traveled? Because in business, there's something called the red ocean strategy and the blue ocean strategy. If you don't have the courage to do something new in paths less traveled, you will end up in a red ocean strategy and then you just be like every other Me Too business. The second one is collaboration. Does that entrepreneur know that they cannot do it alone? You cannot, one tree cannot make a forest. Does that entrepreneur have the mind to find talent? Do they respect talent? Do they know that they need to attract people to themselves to build, their vision? Collaboration. The third one is integrity. Without integrity, that guy is wasted. So we invest in startups today. Imagine and it happens. I must tell you, it happens that instances where this happen, where startup founders will raise money from you and will use that money to jackpot. They raise money from you and then use that money to relocate their family, and sometimes they stay back and then later they go and join. They raise money from you. They see that the business that they are building that you invested in is going down. They go on to go and create a replica. I am telling you, it happens. They use the resources because they have control over the money. Of course, you can't micromanage everybody. They take part of that money and go and start up another business. And then they tell you that you don't have shares in that business. And then they will tell you that this other business has failed. And when the business is failed, it has failed. You have nothing to lose. I mean, you win some, you gain some. That's the essence of the business. Right? So integrity matters a lot. So we look out for those that have integrity. The last two things are related, but I like to separate them. The first one of the last two things, or the fourth point, is selflessness. Look, I was speaking with someone recently, and the person said, I have an idea. I can buy this and sell it. I need to make money. I have an idea. I need to make money. Do you think it's a good way for me to venture into entrepreneurship? And I said, no. Because if you venture into entrepreneurship because of money, you will burn out and you will miss out. You have to focus on solving a problem. It is in solving a problem that money will meet you. Of course, you think about sustainability as a secondary reason, which is how do I do this in a sustainable way? But the first thing is that what problem am I solving? And that is where selflessness come in. Until you know that when an entrepreneur knows that this thing that they are doing is a calling that is beyond them and it's about lifting others, if they are not that selfless, then they cannot have enough fuel when the chips are down. They cannot have enough fuel when they are going through the valley of death, which almost every entrepreneur will go through, which is that time when it feels like nobody's seeing you. It feels like you're wasting your time. They will just tap out because then money is not there. What am I doing here? That's why most people that do, paid employment wants to move into entrepreneurship struggle, right? Because they're saying money, or more, there's no money here now, no money, right? So selflessness is very key. The last point is the greater good. And that's why I said selflessness, and greater good are related, but they are different things. The greater good is about this thing that I'm doing does it carry impact? Am I truly looking away, from what is hurting people, or I'm considering about how to, decide to take the longer route to this because I don't want to hurt people, I don't want to hurt the environment. The greater good is about impact, but while selflessness is about doing this to lift people, So, but you can say impact, but they are different things, right? So these five things, again, to recap: first one is courage. Second one is collaboration. Third one is integrity. The fourth one is selflessness. And the fifth one is the greater good. These things are very, very key. And these are some of the things to look out for in an entrepreneur before we invest. Because beyond money, the biggest investment entrepreneurship support organizations like us, or incubator or innovation labs like us, invest in entrepreneurs beyond money, is our time, is the relationship we build with them, is the time we share with them. Those things are invaluable. The advice we give them, is invaluable. There was a particular guy that lived with me in that 3-bedroom apartment that I lived in. And it was we're just trying a model out at the time. We said, we normally don't support solo entrepreneurs. We support teams of entrepreneurs because of the key man risk. But we said, let's try this guy. This guy is very brilliant, very smart, but he finds it very difficult working with people. We said, let's give him a shot. This guy was living with me, and it took us 6 months to figure out how to build a unique selling point. And that idea came to me after we were both coming back from work and we're going home that day in my car. And it just occurred to me like, oh, what about if we do it this way? And said, wow, he never thought about it. This was 6 months of us talking almost every day about, how can we do this thing that you're doing differently? And he struck me like a lightning bolt. And I said, well, why don't you do it this way? And he said, oh, let me research. And he researched and found out that, and that became one of his first of his kind ever of what he was trying to build. And we built a unique selling point from now. That is invaluable. Money cannot bring that. It is the all the combination of the ideas, the network we've built, the time, and all these experience that we've built ourselves that yielded something for that guy at the time. And that for me is more valuable than money. So yeah, because of all that investment, those five things that I mentioned are very key. Are the things that we look out for when we are picking innovators to support, or teams of innovators to support.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Wale, for sharing that. That's really deep, right? Especially the story of that young man and how, after 6 months of having to, drive in and drive out and do stuff, then that idea came. If you're not patient or if you're not willing to, go out on a limb and just offer that support on and ready to do it on a, for perhaps a, reasonably long period, I'm not sure if that would have happened because the guy would probably have moved out and all of that. So thanks a lot for sharing that. Now, there are a few ideas. So a few questions popping up in my head, right? But I want to first of all double click a little bit on what you call the key man key
Risk.
man challenge, right? It's a key
Mhm.
man risk, right? What is that in your world? What is a key man risk? What does it mean?
Essentially it means that let me use this example so you understand. What happens if Dangote dies tomorrow? What happens to Dangote Empire?
Well,
But
possibly,
you can see that Dangote has a system in place. Most
yeah.
likely, most likely from the way he runs his business, especially because they've even gone public. So you know, once a business can go public and can survive and it can grow as a public company, you know that there's a support, a structure in place. So key man risk talks about, what happens when that one person dies or when that person leaves the business or when that one person walks away. I mean, because tomorrow entrepreneurs are good, they can pick up a job. Like I said, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, right from university days, and today I have a job, right? Even though I own all these other things, but because it aligns with my vision and my passion. So entrepreneurs can turn around tomorrow and pick up a job. What happens to all that investment, that all the time I've put in you and all the money I put in you? You can just walk away if you don't. I mean, they're paying you more than you've ever raised. Why should you didn't see to the business? So that's a key man challenge or key man risk. And we always look out for it. So that when you're walking away, do you have a structure in place? Do you have co-founders? Do you have other people? Have you been able to convince other people to join you on a team? But that guy was just a solo entrepreneur. He found it very difficult to working with people. So he was just being everything like, and it was an extremely smart developer. Well, I don't know where he is again now. Been a long, long time. But I'm sure that he's still very strong and doing very well. But at the time, it was just that risk was just heavy then.
Mm. Okay, so you also mentioned a problem that I want to, for the sake of learning, all right, and for our audience. Now, you mentioned the possibility of a founder, right, taking the money and going, starting something else, and or jackpot, like you rightly said. And I've heard of cases like that, right? The other day, I still saw it in the news. Um, I mean, just a couple of days ago, on somebody WhatsApp status back home saying that some people raised, maybe if I mentioned the figure, you probably connect the dots. Like, is it $16 million? And then they've gone bust, right? And they've closed shop and all of that. The question I want to ask is, as a founder and as somebody who supports businesses, right? What kind of structure do you look out for uh, in the organizations that you support that gives you that confidence, beyond the integrity of the founder, right? What kind of governance do you need them to put in place on their end, on the business end, and on your hand as a founder, or as a founder, sorry? What kind of governance do you try to put in place so that you don't hear these stories that touch?
Okay, great question. I'm going to answer this question in two folds. One from a perspective of a venture lab, which is sorry. So when you hear things like venture lab, innovation hub, tech hub, they all mean the same thing. Or venture studio, they all mean the same thing, right? This for listeners that may be hearing this for the first time. Um, so from the perspective of a venture lab or a tech hub, actually, when these co-founders come to you, they come to you with zero structure, especially if you're an early stage, accelerator. There are some later stage accelerators, but most of us are around early stage, especially in Nigeria here. We support very early stage entrepreneurs. They come to you without a structure. They may come with an experience of having done it before, but they have no structure. They just two guys or three guys or a few guys that are coming together to say, we have an idea. We want to build something. So literally that structure is not there. We help them build it. But the second perspective I wanted to answer this from is from that of of a venture capitalist or a venture investor. Now there are different categories of investors too. You must know. There is the angel investors. Again, just for those that don't know, there are angel investors. Angel investors also come in very early when there's no structure. In fact, when it was just an idea. Sometimes the idea is just probably on paper or there's a demo to show about it. While some angel investors even come very early, especially if they've already developed a relationship with the entrepreneur, or they believe the entrepreneur, or the entrepreneurs, what we call the their not reliability now, but you know, like they have credibility, right? Someone like in, for example, there's a multiple serial entrepreneur, as we call it. If tomorrow he wants to start something again, people will put money in. If he just says this is an idea, is one of the, by the way, in Wennovation is one of the less than 60 or 70 people in the world that have built two unicorns in their lifetime. That is tech-driven businesses from the scratch in their lifetime, and he was in pioneer CEO of both businesses. So it's not a common thing that yeah, that is done, right? So if tomorrow, and he's already on his third venture, right, which is also another conglomerate of other businesses. If tomorrow he wakes up and he says he wants to do something, you can almost be sure that entrepreneurs, just by him saying this is my idea, I need money, people will put money in it, right? So that case is different. But for most venture capital firms, they look out for, number one, do you have traction? Do you have, this business is already bringing in money? That's the ultimate proof that people would part with their money to buy your product. But then they're also looking for the team. Does this team, are they balanced? Do you have the sector knowledge? Do you have experience in that space? Or do you have very strong conviction? Or have you been able to prove that you know that sector very well? Do you have the right people? So if I give you this money, can you either use that money? Are you promising that you're prioritizing that you're going to use that money to raise key talents that would help you put the right structure in place? Or do you already have that structure in place? Maybe like a financial manager, like a CFO, or do you have a chief technology officer that is highly skilled, or do you have like a marketer, depending on what you're building and what you're trying to run. So most VCs will look out for, those things. Are you properly registered? If I put money in you, what's the agreement? What is signing the agreement with me as an investor? How do I exit that agreement? I mean that investment. What are the terms other investors are putting on the table? Those things, those structures even go beyond just the team. More about protecting your investment, and how you as an organization had thought about, or how you as a management team have thought about those things for the investors. So yeah, so the structures differ, and from those two perspectives, you can see that one without structure, one structure
Mm.
that even goes beyond just the business, but how you're going to spend the money, what are your priorities, what are your capacities, what do you want to use this money to do to build your capacity, and so on and so forth. Essentially, like a plan.
I get it. I get it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So, is it safe to assume that since most of the time when these guys come to you, they come without a structure per se? Is it safe to assume that when you're funding some of these guys, you have like a voice on the board, right? You have somebody who represents you on the board, one, and who is a signatory to the account to ensure that they're not just buying business class tickets all over the place, flying and just living the life. Do you do stuff like that?
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes sit on the board, not all the time. I mean, Lofting, for example, till date, I've invested in almost over 200 startups. You can imagine. How many boards can you sit on? Some of them will die. Some of them will not die. Some of them will continue to not really grow. Some of them will grow exponentially, right?
Mm,
So really, it's always difficult for you to always say that you want to sit on the board. Plus, most times, you're investing along with other people. So sometimes people, there are lead investors that would take that board position, as the case may
mm,
be. So yes, but I also want to correct the notion here about signing money and all that. You can't really micromanage
things
entrepreneurs.
like that. Mm.
Yes, as a board chairman, for example, not just a mere board member, of which you're not probably not the board, you're going to be the board chairman.
Yeah,
As a board chairman, yes, you might have structures in place that say that when you want to withdraw certain money beyond a certain limit, the board chairman needs to know and needs to sign. But board chairmen that are affected, that run effective boards, don't sign on the bulk of the money that the CEO needs to
it's
run the
true.
entity,
It's true.
or else you'll be
Yeah.
stifling the CEO. right? So
Yeah.
just to also point that out, so it's not about ego watching, the entrepreneur per se, but it is about guiding that entrepreneur. That's the reason why I said integrity.
So it
You
comes
know,
down to integrity and trust of
yes,
for
and
that person
trust.
because
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. You want something?
Mm. No, no, no. Just to I mean to buttress the point you're making, because if we cannot micromanage, if we cannot sit on all the boards, I mean, look at the example you cited. You supported more than 200 businesses, right? How many of them can you sit on? If you can't do all of those things, then it comes down to you being very, very selective about, the vetting. Sorry, being very thorough with the vetting process and very selective about who you give the support to, right?
Exactly.
Because we simply don't have the capacity, right? And I
Yeah.
say we now. I'm adding myself to your community.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Very
Simply
true.
the community, we simply don't have the capacity to sit on, on all the boards and micromanage them and all of that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Even though you might be lucky now to even now have maybe artificial intelligence to maybe help you attend all board meetings, and especially if you're a member of those boards, but you still need to analyze whatever it is, even if you tell
Like
AI
the
to
number.
summarize it. So, like, you're very correct. It's about the selection is one of the biggest things,
Mm,
because it's in selection that you select based on values, not based on just ideas. That's why every VC that knows what they're doing will tell you that team is the first thing that they consider, not the
mm,
idea. Because an idea can fail, but that team. So let me give you, a lot of people don't know the backstory of um Andela, for example. Andela started as Fora. What my partner at Lofting led the investment in as angel investors then. What he invested in originally was Fora, but
mm,
in being someone with integrity, pivoted that idea from Fora to Andela and
mm.
carried all those investors into Andela. Imagine if he didn't have integrity. So he stumbled on the gold mine and he says, guys, and she really invested in a different business now, and let's shut it down. Like some people did to us. And let's tell them that
Mm,
that one has failed. We found a new gold mine. Let's go and do it. And he pivoted. Foreign and Led are not doing the same thing, although they are both focused on education, they're both focused on youth, but not
mm,
doing two different things. But it took all those investors from Fora into Andela. So it is
mm,
at the selection that you can only do that, right? What about if
mm.
if he decides not to? Legally, he can declare that entity is bankrupt legally.
Failed. Yeah.
And if you like go
Mm.
to the Supreme Court of the world, you will not win the case, right? You can only try and
Supreme
prove
Court of the world.
of the world. You can't win that case. So it's in the selection. And once you get the
Mm.
selection right, that's the reason why great VCs are the ones that know how to pick, right? And that's
The
beyond
best.
just the science. It's beyond the science.
Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you on the next episode.